this webinar. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day one of the Woodburn June webinar series about e-commerce. So e-commerce is a tremendously hot topic at the moment. Companies, especially brands, are seeing the opportunities in the Chinese market in relation to e-commerce, particularly because nobody can travel to China. There is the border controls, etc. So we've put together a webinar series for you, which is 4 days, 90 minutes each day on a, for me, very important topic that is critical to developing your e-commerce strategy for China. Some of you might already be doing e-commerce in China. Some of you might be at the early stages. Some of you might just be exploring, all right? The idea this week is to give you an overview of what you need to think about, what should be your action plan, and how you should then move forward in the next couple of months, all right? Now, I tend to want to always start my webinars getting familiar with my audience. And if you would be so kind, especially for those of you that are new to me, there are a lot of new names today. I would love to know a little bit about yourselves. So are you newbies to China, meaning have you found an opportunity, but you are still exploring the market? You're trying to gain a certain level of education to know how to go about that opportunity and how to protect your business. Type in newbie. If you are a startup in China, then basically for me, it would mean that you've been transacting in China for a period of 1 to 3 years, either from your head office or directly in China through a distributor or through your own entity. And you're realizing that things are getting a bit out of hand or chaotic, and you're up here again trying to understand how things work, then type in startup. And if you're an experienced China hand, which I know there are a few of you on here that are, type in experienced. Again, it just gives a bit of input for myself in terms of who's in the audience. When I was looking at the registration list, it did look like a combination of both newbies and startups. So that always helps. Thank you, Bettina. So we've got the spectrum here from new to experienced. Fantastic. Thank you for everybody for typing in. How this webinar works is I am here to educate you, basically. Today's topic is about brand protection in general, as well as on the e-commerce marketplaces. So what I would like you to do is anytime that there is something where you need clarity, you need transparency, or you don't understand something, please don't hesitate to ask a question in the chat box, okay? We're gonna have the Q&A at the end. And my philosophy is that there is no dumb question when it comes to China. So ask away. The whole point of this webinar is for you to get educated, is for you to give you the information as far as I can, and that you go away today with an action plan, all right? From a technical standpoint, we are using Zoom meetings. So you have logged in using a unique URL. I cannot control your connectivity. So if you run into connectivity issues, please just log off and try and log back in. And if that doesn't work, we are recording today's session and hopefully it will go up on our YouTube channel by the end of today. Cross fingers that I've got the time to do that. And I will be sending out an email to you to let you know that it's up there. And if you're a subscriber to our YouTube channel, you'll get a notification in any case. If I run into any technical issues, just know that it does take a little bit of time for me to get connected back to my Wi-Fi and get back on. It's usually between 1 to 2 minutes. I'm coming back, all right? I'm coming back to finish today's presentation. I understand if you can't stay on, but just know I will be coming back on to finish the recording, all right? That's the technical side. Just a bit of background. If you guys don't know who I am, my name's Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I'm a leading expert on inbound investment into China. 100% of my clientele are foreign investors that are looking to enter the Hong Kong or Chinese market. What we do is we do all types of corporate services, everything from pre-investment advisory to trademark protection, incorporation, accounting, tax, payroll, outsourcing, financial advisory, a whole variety of things that are related to administrative functions that you need to perform when doing business in China. We have developed a series of webinars because what we have found over the years is that China has become more open, more efficient, and procedures have become actual processes, making my life a lot easier in the administrative world. So we've developed a whole array of webinars for people to be able to download and understand how to enter the Chinese market. Everything from developing your China roadmap, protecting and saving your brand, which is the topic for today, incorporating your company, choosing the right people when you're hiring those first hires in the market, management, corporate management, who those people should be, etc. So I just want you to know that these are available, and the most important aspect to China is having a knowledge level that protects you as well. Knowledge is power in China. The more you know, the more leverage you'll have over other people, because you'll know how it actually works. On a side note, over 2020, I wrote a book, had to keep myself a little bit busy. I wrote a book called The 9 Superpowers to Succeed in China, which is basically tools and principles that you can take away with you to design your own roadmap in China, your own market entry, kind of like a checklist of what you need to think about if you are doing business in China. It's being sold on ebook as well as hard copy on Amazon. Go to any Amazon and you'll be able to find it. So let's start today with brand protection on e-commerce platforms. We have a long agenda for today in terms of what is a trademark, how it works to protect it, who are the enemies in the market, and ultimately what the e-commerce platforms are doing to help you to protect your trademark. All right, so it's a 2-page agenda basically that we're going to go through today. Now, why should you be concerned by protecting your brand in China? Well, first of all, I'm sure in the media, you have learned about all the enemies, from IP squatters, IP hijackers, to product counterfeiters, etc. But don't also underestimate the people that you are working with, whether it is your suppliers, your customers, your agents, your employees, your media agencies. Anybody can actually become an enemy. Now, I've got 23 people on here live, and I've got about 80 that registered today. If you are on this webinar, it's because you are doing something in China. If you have not registered your trademark yet, that is your first action plan after this webinar, because your names are starting to get known. You're here to learn, you're here to get an education, and you should be registering it straight away. And potentially, the first action you should be doing is doing a trademark search to even check if the name or your brand is available. Because who knows? Maybe somebody has taken it. We recently did a trademark registration for a cosmetics brand out of the UK who actually had a random individual register their trademark September last year. Zero connection to this person. Probably this person read an article about the brand in a cosmetics magazine, saw that it was an upcoming brand, and immediately took advantage of the situation. All right. Doesn't mean they're going to do something bad with the brand. It's just mean they took the leverage and they said, you know what, I can imagine this brand is eventually coming to China. I'm going to register it. Nobody else has. And I'll sell it to them when they want it. That's probably their thought process, okay? So it can be also a random person on the street who's read in media documents about your brand, how it's up and coming, how you might be wanting to go into China, and just go ahead and register it. So I say this about China because that's my expertise, is China. But in whatever market you're looking to enter into, your first priority should be trademark protection. And I get it. It doesn't affect your revenue. Like it's an administrative process that you as a sales manager, business owner, you don't deal with administration. You couldn't care less. But it's probably the most fundamental aspect you should be doing in any market you are going into. And why I'm so passionate about it is because I do see brands not being able to go into the Chinese market because they didn't put this on their top priority list of action. All right. So one of the key criteria about e-commerce is the fact that you will not be able to put your products on the e-commerce platforms if you don't have your trademark registration in China. Simple as that. And I'll touch on that a little bit more in detail when we come to the e-commerce portion. But what I want people, and again, I am passionate about this because I want people to realize and analyze this, is how much is your brand worth to you? What is it worth? Now, I've gone through the process myself where our trademark was taken by a random person on the street in China, no connection at all, just saw our marketing and took it because I didn't even make it a priority. And I also made the assumption that as a service company, who cares? But whatever sector you are in, whether it's service, product, you need to register your brand if you're doing something in the Chinese market, whether it's a trade show, whether it's simply passing out your name cards, whatever it is. Now, what was that brand worth to me? The hassle that it took to rebrand. I spent 3 months, well, 4 months, if you calculate the whole thing, 6 months with legal fees, and then making a decision to go with the route of rebranding. And then you have to change your whole collateral, your website, your documents. I mean, everything has to be amended. So how much is your brand worth to you? If you guys even know the figure and you're willing to share it, let us know. Do you even know how to make that calculation? What is the hassle if somebody has taken it for the Chinese market? And I'll give you some tips and tools if that does happen. But how much is your brand worth to you? All right. And again, I get it. It's an administrative process. That sucks. Nobody likes paperwork. That's the #1 priority that I ask people. I promote people. I encourage people to take seriously because it will impact your business in China if you don't do it. Now, what is considered a trademark in China? A trademark is a visual sign, okay? It's a word, it's a design, letters of the alphabet, a combination of colors, symbols, logos, that type of thing, all right? Anybody can register it. It can be a person, can be a company, and it can be for any type of product or service, okay? Now, a lot of people make the assumption if they are in the service sector that they don't have to register their marks. Regardless of what you are doing, you should be registering your logo, your brand, whatever it is, word, design, colors, whatever it might be, all right? To give you a concrete example, I'm gonna use the Woodburn logo, all right? So you've got the Woodburn logo, the circle with the WB in there. You've got Woodburn Accountants and Advisors, which is words, which basically explains the name of the company and what we do. And then you've got the combination. You've got the logo plus the words. Now, if you have the budget and if you want to have the security of full protection, you would register all 3 of these items. Just the logo, just the words, and the logo plus the words. That's if you want full protection, okay? And if you have the budget available to do that. Alternatively, you can also say, I'm just going to register the words. I don't care if somebody takes my logo. I don't care if somebody copies my logo and puts a different color. That doesn't bother me, right? It's you evaluating what is of value to you with your assets, all right? And our evaluation was Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is the most critical, The logo just makes it look pretty. We could also do without the logo, but we thought people would like to see a logo. If somebody takes the logo, we would be fine with just Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. So we only registered for that because we didn't want to spend too much money on it. And Woodburn Accountants and Advisors for us is registered in the classes where we operate in. Okay. This is an evaluation that every single company has to do. You have to look at all of your brand assets, different types of logos, different words, whatever it might be, the combinations, and evaluate what you're going to use in the Chinese market. And is it of value to you to protect? All right. That's analysis work, basically. Who should register their trademark in China? So whether you have a trading company in China, a manufacturing company in China, a service company in China, a representative office in China, if you have a temporary liaison office, meaning you've hired a guy that's sitting in China, if you've got a temporary marketing office, again, that you've hired a marketing or brand manager in China, but not legally employed through any entity, if you've got an overseas company with no subsidiary in China, but you're doing business in China, for any company that's about to market into China, for any individuals about to travel to China, you should be registering your trademark. So ultimately, everyone doing or thinking about doing business in China should be registering their trademark. The sooner, the better. Before it gets published in media magazines or sector or industry magazines that you're about to go into market. All right, everybody. And please don't start giving me excuses. Oh, but Christina, I'm only sourcing in China. I don't need to do it. Whatever you're doing in China, everyone doing or thinking about doing business in China should be registering their trademark. Again, the sooner the better. Now, my philosophy is let's do a bit of homework so we know exactly what the situation is before we move forward, okay? So although it's not mandatory, it's not a requirement, I always recommend to do a search on the trademark database to understand whether anybody is using a similar mark, the same name, in the classes that you want to register in. It's just a piece of homework, right? So that you understand the chances of success when you are actually doing the application for your trademark. Why do I say that? Because ultimately you don't want to get into a situation where 9 to 10 months down the line, you've registered your mark, and 9 to 10 months down the line, you get a notification from the CTMO office, which is the China Trademark Office, that it's been rejected because somebody else has it. All right. We don't want to waste time. Nobody wants to waste time. So doing a search allows you to evaluate what is similar, what is identical, what's already there, understanding your chances of success if you do go through the application process. And please, nobody can ever guarantee success. Nobody can, because it's the CTMO's office that will do their own evaluation on what will be success. What providers should be doing is giving you a ratio or a percentage of success rate, right? So look, you've got 50% chance of getting this right. You need to have a backup plan just in case. Or, you know what? You've got 0% chance of getting anything right. That does happen because there are marks that are identical. But you should get a percentage of chance for success so you know what risk you're taking when you're going through the registration. Not that you're just wasting money without doing that piece of homework first. Again, not required. Nobody's asking you to do this type of search. I just recommend it because it does take about 12 months to get a registration done. And you don't want to hit the 9-10 month mark and realize, you know what, it's not even available. In my personal situation, we had registered and got no notification even, just an email from the actual owner of the mark to say, please stop using it. And then when we did search in the system, this guy had actually registered the mark 14 days prior to us filing it. Talk about chances, right? Bad luck, but it happened. So even if we would have done our search, which we did do, we found nothing, which is why we went ahead with the application, because the guy did it 14 days before we actually submitted as well. Now, the system in China is basically the first to file system, which is ultimately the idea or the concept that the first person to file it owns it, regardless of its popularity in another jurisdiction. China only cares about China. The first person who takes that brand and registers it in the class owns it, which ultimately means that you can be locked out of China, not being able to use your brand in China. All right, because basically anyone can lay claim to it. Now, of course, if you are a Starbucks, a Nike, and you can show a global presence of your brand, you can fight it. But my assumption is that most global brands out there that are in, I don't know, over 150 countries are already registered. And even those brands are having issues, right? In terms of people creating similar names, not identical names. But be aware of this first to file concept. Considerations for registering your trademark, okay? Now, again, this is a homework piece for everybody. So I'd love for you all to take notes on this. This is what you should be taking away from today. Number one is doing a trademark search. Are your brand assets available for registration? And are they available in the classes that you want to register in? Two, what do you want to register? So what are you going to be using in the Chinese market? Okay. If you've got, I don't know, 10 different brand assets, are you going to be using all 10 of those in the Chinese market, or are you only going to be using 2 or 3? You've got to make that analysis. So what are you actually going to be able to register? Who is going to own that trademark? Now, if you already have an entity in China, I would not recommend that your entity in China owns that trademark, because in the future, you cannot develop a licensing agreement for use of that mark in China. Our recommendation is always to have an overseas company owning it so that you can develop repatriation strategies in the future. Okay, but you've got to decide who's going to physically own it. And then you've got to analyze what are the right classes and subclasses for that registration. So as a starting point, if you already have a brand, I don't know, in the UK, in the US, in Canada, in Australia, in Germany, wherever it might be, I assume you have already registered that in your own home jurisdiction. So I would take that registration, look at the classes and subclasses. We take that and analyze what would then fit for the Chinese market. Alternatively, again, it's administration, so people don't like doing this, is you take a piece of paper, you take a pen, you put little bullet points and you say, I'm going to do import export. I'm going to produce in China. And when I produce in China, the packaging will have this brand asset. The labeling will have this brand asset. Maybe the plastic that is holding the item will have this brand asset. And you go through the process of analyzing where in China will people visually see the brand? Will it be on service agreements? Will it be on marketing documentation? Will it be on advertising? Will it be, there's so many different things, but taking a piece of paper and looking at that bullet point list to say, where are my brands going to be seen, is an invaluable activity to do. It gives you so much clarity to know how to protect your brand assets, and then to evaluate in which classes and subclasses they should be registered in. All right. The classes and subclasses are very similar to global standards. There are slight differences, and sometimes they're even broken down further than what they are abroad. So you can always take that as a starting point. So these are 4 action points. This is 4 homework pieces. I just want to reiterate again. I'll reiterate it again at the end. search if your trademark is available, what do you want to register, which entity is going to own it, and which classes and subclasses are going to be registering in. Okay? Why are we doing all of this? Well, because there are enemies on the ground. I had an enemy. I had a guy who basically, I don't know if you would call it hijack, or, he basically infringed on my brand and took advantage of it. And he took advantage through the first to file system. Okay. But you have people out there who are going to be very strategic as to why they are registering your brand. Like, my assumption is what this cosmetics company, they've had somebody who's taken their brand, a guy off the street. And why has he done it? My assumption is because the brand is becoming more and more visually seen in the media and in specific cosmetic journals and whatnot, that I think he just took advantage of that and said, I'm for sure they're going to go into China one day. I'll register it and they'll have to buy it from me. And then I can choose whatever price, right? So trademark hijacking is basically when somebody takes your brand because there's success elsewhere, and eventually they ask for licensing fees, or they even sue for infringement because they have the first to file obligation. All right. So that's trademark hijacking. And it could be that they want to tarnish the brand, but ultimately my belief always is that it's a monetary aspect. They want to earn something off of you. Okay. So whether it's through a licensing agreement or whatever, but the downside to all of this is obviously the tarnishing of the image, but it's also what happens if they actually use that brand name to sell inferior products or services. That's not good. Because you're trying to build a reputation in China. Something that Annie will highlight on Wednesdays is all about reputation and developing a certain level of reputation in the Chinese market. And if your brand is already seen there selling inferior products, that's not going to help you at all in terms of your marketing strategy or your branding strategy, right? So you've got to be aware of that aspect. And then you've got the IP squatters who basically perceive a future value on registering your brand name, whether that value will happen today or whether it might happen in 5 years, right? And again, they hold on to that trademark registration. And again, they can claim trademark infringement when you go into the market 5 years later. So this is something that's very important to understand, is that when I meet a company who's interested in the Chinese market, it can take anywhere from 1 month to 2 years before they decide to actually sell anything in China. They do 2 years of preparation work to do market research, data mining, whatever it might be, okay? In that period of 2 years, you're going to be talking to multiple people, whether it's logistics providers, branding companies, media agencies, TPs, e-commerce marketplaces, distributors. You're going to be talking to everybody to understand how the market works, how you want to do business there, which means that everybody knows that your brand is coming in. And any of those people, it's word of mouth, they start talking to friends who talk to friends who talk to friends who talk to friends, can register it because they perceive a value and you haven't done it yet. Which is why, again, I get that it's administrative. I get that maybe you haven't even decided that China is a market for you, but I guarantee you at some point you will decide that China is a market for you. And this is a simple administrative function that is of utmost importance. All right. Now, if somebody owns your IP in China, what does that mean for you? It basically means that it is illegal for you to sell any goods or services bearing that trademark in China. It is illegal for you to manufacture or source goods from China. It is illegal for you to provide a service locally in China, again, bearing that brand. You can source locally in China as long as that brand is not on there. You can sell in China as long as that brand is not on there. You can manufacture or source goods in China as long as that brand is not shown anywhere, okay? And ultimately, it's illegal for you to market yourself in China if somebody else owns that brand name. So you can't initiate any branding campaigns or marketing campaigns with that brand name in China. All right. Now, this is the same for the e-commerce marketplaces. When I say selling, not just wholesale, it's not just retail, it's also on e-commerce. Okay. Now, there was a question that popped in. Kevin, I think you're on here. I think I saw you enter in. Kevin wrote me an email on Sunday asking me a couple of questions. And one of them was, if I'm doing cross-border e-commerce and somebody else has registered my brand, can I still sell? No, you can't. In theory, you cannot. It is illegal for you to do so because somebody else in China owns that brand. And you are selling your product in China on a Chinese marketplace. So that brand, if they find out, that company, if they find out you are doing that, they have every right to sue for infringement, even if you have no company in China. They can sue your overseas company. So I'm just going to repeat that for people to understand. Even if you're doing cross-border e-commerce, meaning you are shipping documents from your home jurisdiction to the Chinese marketplaces, Tmall China, JD.com, or whatever, and you are bearing a mark on that product that is already registered in China by somebody else, you cannot sell that product with that brand name on those marketplaces. That company who owns the brand in China can sue you for infringement. I'm gonna let that sink in a little bit. All right. You have to think of China as a total territory. And even when you've got e-commerce platforms, they are registered in China, they are Chinese marketplaces. And one of the criteria to sell on the marketplaces, by the marketplaces, is that they want to see a trademark certificate to show that you own it, that you own that brand name. A Chinese trademark certificate, by the way, right? So please be aware of that. It's so vital. And here are just scenarios that I've created if somebody else owns your IP. So you could have goods that you manufacture in China can be seized by Chinese authorities and they can be considered as counterfeit goods because the brand that is on there is owned by somebody else. Or it is possible for the Chinese registrant to freely manufacture goods under the trademark and export them to another country. So what that means is basically you've got this Chinese guy who's registered your brand. He can manufacture the goods in China, have the brand name listed on there, and export them to any other country where you still have not registered your mark. So let's say you're a UK brand. You've got China, and let's say you've got India, right? Ultimately, Chinese guy has registered your brand in China, not allowing you any access. He now decides to export to India. You haven't registered there, but he can do that because you haven't registered there. So this is why IP is so vital. And this is why IP lawyers are so passionate about this, because people don't pay enough attention to it, especially if you are a company that is looking to expand internationally and create a global supply chain and import export in a variety of different countries. Your IP needs to be taken care of in each country. Now, what should your trademark strategy be on e-commerce platforms? That would be a little bit different than if you were just doing distribution or just doing retail. Okay, what would be the differences? All right. So the first is obviously knowing what are your brand assets, right? Understanding in which classes and subclasses you want to register in. Again, I always say research prior to doing anything. Then if there are no problems, register as soon as possible, like yesterday. It's easy and quick to file. People don't realize how easy and quick it actually is. And then what you want to do, although the e-commerce marketplaces are doing a much better job today than they have done in the past, we still recommend companies, and again, I don't offer this service, I'm just saying this from a protection standpoint, is to engage a monitoring service to see whether your brand is already being promoted or used online. Now, I have a story on that where a company was producing, oh my God, I've forgotten the name. You know, when you have a baby, you have a wrap, baby wrap. I've forgotten what the name is. So it's a baby, you have a baby and you have a wrap, and you wrap this baby, and this company had designs, graphic designs that they used on these wraps, and they had already protected their brand name. Their supplier took the faulty wraps, took the labels off of the faulty wraps, and inserted another brand name, but the wraps were identical, and how they recognized it was through the graphic design that was on the wraps. And when they did then a background check, you know, going back, they saw that the owner of that Tmall shop was an employee of the supplier who was taking the faulty wraps, you know, they had stitching issues or whatever it might be, and sold them still on e-commerce platforms. So monitoring is fundamental, because again, you don't want to build a reputation in China on these e-commerce platforms that is based on poor quality. You are taking advantage of the fact that you are a Western brand going into the Chinese market, made in UK, made in Britain, made in Germany, made in the US, or whatever it might be. You're taking it to China and somebody is copying it, right? And you're not protecting it. So you can imagine a piece of cloth can't be protected, but the graphic design that is on the cloth can be. Again, very important to have an IP lawyer who guides you through all of that and gives you these scenarios so you understand what you have to do to protect your brand and protect your products and or your services, right? So engage a monitoring service to do research. Is your brand already being promoted, used by somebody? And it's possible that that happens because it hasn't been registered. Is the product being used in China by somebody or it's being sold on those marketplaces, right? You've got to monitor both aspects, the brand and the product. If you are engaged in e-commerce in China, you've got to adopt an online brand protection strategy, and you've got to invest in the technology behind it. The monitoring services is by monitoring the e-commerce marketplaces, but you've also got to you've also got to protect yourself on the web. I know that sounds very broad and vague, but you know, if you do a search of your brand right now in the Baidu search engine, what pops up? Have any of you ever checked that? Just do it. This is homework you can do at your own desk, guys. Open up www.baidu.cn, type in your name, your English name, whatever it might be, and see what pops up. Okay, you might not be able to read all of that, but we all have the function now of Google Translate, right? Where you can do a quick translation to see what is being said about you. This is all a homework piece for you. And again, you might want to have a monitoring service, not only engaged in the marketplaces, but also engaged basically in the web to see what is being said about you, what type of reputation you're building up, etc. And ultimately, I would always have an IP lawyer in the back of my pocket, all right? Because you might find that there are numerous infringement cases. But to be able to talk to somebody who is a lawyer in China who can advise you on what you should be doing is fundamental. I can, with the experience that I have, I can help you, but I'm not a lawyer, all right? I can't take you to arbitration. I can't formulate letters that might be needed to send out to people. So you should have an IP lawyer in your back pocket, especially if you're really taking your brand seriously. Because there's no point in spending money to register your assets, then not monitor them, and not realize what's actually happening in the market. It's a pity, because you're then investing money in branding initiatives, but not really knowing what's physically going on in the market. And remember, it's a big market. It's not just Shanghai. You've got China, right? So it's large scale. Tips on how to find infringed products online. And again, Obviously, this is happening more and more because of COVID. People don't necessarily have the budgets to spend. I get it. So what I wanted to give you was tips that you can do at your desk. All right. So you can do search for names which are identical or similar to your brand on the marketplaces, as well as on the Chinese web or on the Chinese social media platforms. Now, you might find that a little bit difficult to do because you might not read Chinese, you might not speak Chinese. This is where I would say, okay, either you hire a Chinese intern or you outsource it to a company that knows how to do all this type of work and gives you the reports you need to visually understand and have clarity on what next steps to take. Okay. Search for your brand or product name in Chinese. So do like a pronunciation translation, and there you might find a variety. So again, if you've got a Chinese intern or Chinese friends who can help you with that, then, or you use Google Translate and you'll see the pinyin when you do instead of the characters, you can also see the pinyin, and you just do quick searches on that and see what pops up. Because it could very well be that a supplier has changed your English brand name or has changed Woodburn Accountants and Advisors into Chinese, and then is registering that, right? The issue is are they in the same business as I am, and are they affecting my reputation? Okay. Again, use the Chinese search engines. So Baidu, Bing, use Baidu.cn, use Baidu.com, do this type of variety. Again, these are all homework pieces that you could do at your desk. If you feel like you're not getting anywhere, or your Chinese interns are not getting anywhere, or if you've got Chinese staff, they're not getting anywhere, then again, outsource this to a monitoring company that can actually do that for you. How to spot a suspicious sale on the marketplaces. So suspicion arises if the listing was made by an individual or a company who's not involved in your official distribution channel. So, many times you might find that your distributor has set up the marketplaces on your behalf, but you have transparency on that. Now, if you do a search by yourself and you realize that there is some form of infringement, and you look at the owner behind that, and it's an individual or company that's not associated with anybody in your contact list for China, something's going on there. Could be an individual that was employed, could be a friend of a friend, could be a brother or a sister, or somebody who has gotten familiar with your brand name, okay? And then you do a background check on what's happening there. Or if the product is listed several times with a wide variation between prices for each listing, okay? Again, my assumption is that if you're producing in China, it's always going to be supplier related, but might not be, okay? Could be that they're just also selling counterfeit products, i.e. products that are identical to yours, but of lower quality. So again, check that carefully. Or if the vendor has a large number of units available for sale. So let's say you have a cosmetics product or glass like this, and they're selling 1 million pieces versus, maybe 100 or 200 that they might have in stock, okay? So check this. Again, this is just, it raises suspicion, which means you take it to the next level of investigation. But you can't be lazy on this, okay? Now, the biggest question is, are the Chinese platforms helping in the fight for product infringement? And the answer is yes. Whether in reality it's actually succeeding, I can't tell you. But they are, by law, required to help. So what have they done? And each of them has a different story, but I'm going to sum up what they've done. So number one is when you are registering to have a shop on these platforms, the number one criteria in terms of the application documents you have to submit is a trademark certificate from the CTMO office that your brand assets have been registered in China. The second is they have created trademark infringement hotlines or divisions in their organization, but they're hotlines that are in multiple languages. I believe Japanese and Korean have now also been added. English, of course, and Chinese, where you can call to state that there's been an infringement. Now, if you are sitting in the UK and you are calling them to tell them, don't expect much action to happen from there. They need a bit of push because you can't imagine the amount of calls they get in a day. So again, having an IP lawyer in your back pocket who makes that phone call has much higher, is a much higher level push to actually something materializing from it than if you're calling from the UK to a hotline in China saying there's an infringement on my brand, I'm unhappy. No, that doesn't, you know, what are you gonna get? And let's face it, you can't travel to China at the moment. So having somebody on the ground who has the legal background to actually validate what the situation is, has proof, has screenshots or whatever it might be, and passes that on is going to validate it much better. Okay, which is again why I recommend having a monitoring service and having an IP lawyer in your back pocket for situations like this. But just know you do have a place to reach out to. But it does take a bit of coercive push to actually get something to materialize from it, okay? But by law, all of the platforms are supposed to have this division, this hotline, and they are supposed to ask for these trademark certificates, but you have to imagine this is something that is relatively new, started, I wanna say after 2019. So all the other shops that were created prior to 2019 are not required to show the trademark certificate because they're in the past. It's only from 2019 onwards. I hope I'm getting the dates right, but I do believe it was 2019. So yeah, you know, doesn't mean that there's a whole group that hasn't shown their trademark certificate that's still selling on the platform. I might be selling counterfeit products or it might be selling products with your brand name. Registering your trademark. I say this almost daily with my kids now. It's easy peasy lemon squeezy. It is so easy to do and people just don't do it. And so I get upset because it is so easy to do. And I wish people would just do it. But I get it. It's an administrative process. I get it. And maybe China's not even a market you want to go into, but you're researching it. So, you know, there's no guarantee you're actually going to get in. With the growth opportunity that is existing in China, for sure you will be doing something. Might not be e-commerce, it might be something else. And whatever you're doing, this is a fundamental basis for being successful in the Chinese market. And you can't imagine how many people don't make this a priority. I, being in the corporate services world, did not make it a priority. And I had to rebrand. Painful process. All right. So why is it easy? Because all you have to do is sign a prepared power of attorney. All the service providers send you a copy, you print it out, you put your signature, right? You need an order form, which highlights basically the brand assets, who's the owner, and in what classes you're going to set up. It's a registration form that every provider has. We send it to you. We will fill it out for you even, if you like. We need soft copy or JPEGs of the trademarks, which normally we put straight in the order form. We need a copy of the identity proof of the owner of those trademarks. So whether it's the business license, certificate of incorporation, passport copy, whatever. And we need, so the signature that was put on that power of attorney has to be the signature that is written just on that document. That's all we need. Just a signature on, print out your certificate of incorporation, you put your signature on it, okay? And then the priority document is really only in special circumstances. And it can only be filed after 3 months of the first filing application. I've put it in there so people are aware of it. Very difficult to for it to actually be used, but it is an option. Ultimately, you need documents 1 to 4, of which 1 and 2 are prepared by your service provider, whoever that's going to be. We all have the same systems. You have to give us your assets that you want registered, and you just have to print out your certificate of incorporation and put your signature on it. That's it, just your signature. So easy. That's the 4 administrative steps you have to do. The rest is done by your service provider in China, whomever that might be. That's why I get frustrated, guys. That's why I get frustrated when people don't take it seriously, don't make it a priority, and then come complaining to lawyers or to us or to whomever that somebody's taken it. Yeah, no kidding, somebody's taken it because it's so easy to take. All right? So easy to take. So don't think, just do it. You don't need to think in any of these 4 steps. The only thinking you have to do is in the analysis of your brand assets and what are you going to do? What are you going to register? What can you afford to get registered? And the second step is just knowing what classes and subclasses, but you'll get so much guidance from your service providers or IP lawyers who have this experience that they will recommend it to you in any case. Not much for you to do, except maybe make a decision on the budget. And I hope that this is in everyone's budget. All right, so don't think, just do. Safeguarding your brand is critical, all right? And I think that it is really critical in the e-commerce space. There are millions of shops that are on the various marketplaces, and you want to protect your reputation in China because what you want to do is build sales momentum. That's everybody's goal. Everybody's goal is to make money, to have consumers to buy your products on the e-commerce platforms. You might invest a little bit in marketing and branding to build that reputation, but we need to make sure that we also take action. We need to register our IP rights. We've got to monitor those e-commerce sites. And if we find any form of infringement, we actually take action on it. You request takedowns. And again, you won't be able to do that, but your lawyers will be able to request for takedowns from the police. Okay? China is prepared to take action on this, regardless of what you read in the media. I want you all to be aware of that. I know the media says, oh, China, no rights. They don't even save your IP. I get it. But you know what? If you didn't register your IP in time, the only fault is yours. Sorry, that might be a bit brash, but if you didn't register your brand in time, it's your fault for not having registered it in time. All right? Nobody else's. I know people like to blame, but it's yours ultimately. It was mine when I didn't register it. Can't blame anybody but myself for not having done it. That pain of 6 months of rebranding can only blame myself. So why are we going through all of this? And I just wanted to finish off today with a couple of case studies, all right? So this is a German company. They produce locks, hence the picture of the lock. They produce in China, and then they decided to get a distributor who had exclusive rights. This was 25 years ago now. And they gave permission to the distributor to register their brand name in order for the distributor to initiate marketing campaigns, branding campaigns, and so that people would know that they have the right to the brand. Because their strategy 25 years ago was China will never be open enough for us to do this ourselves. We will never be able to go into China on our own. Lo and behold, you can go to China on your own now. Okay, I don't fault these guys because that really was the perception 25 years ago. China wasn't opening up, very slowly, and they wanted to build momentum. Now we know better. We know China is open. We know, and you will learn more about this tomorrow, what we can do ourselves and what we cannot do ourselves. And what we can do ourselves is own our brand assets. We don't have to give this away free of charge. We don't have to give it to people so that they have the momentum to promote your brand. You can control that. You can own that. Now, what happened in this scenario? And again, 25 years ago, they didn't know better. But what happened is that they realized they could go to China on their own. Next step is eliminate the distributor, save money, earn more, forgetting that the distributor owned the brand. The distributor came back, lost face a little bit and said, okay, you want to get rid of me? You still have to pay me a licensing fee for the use of the brand in China. So we will still maintain our relationship. They had leverage. And in the end, the negotiating went on and on. They had to pay out a lump sum fee to buy their brand back. Money that potentially they did not have to use or waste, if they would have just had control and registered themselves. And 25 years ago, you could register it yourself, mind you. Another thing is when you are registering your brand, particularly if you are in the product sector, follow through, because people don't know about the second step. The first step is registering your brand assets at the CTMO office, the China Trademark Office. That means you're registering your logos, the words, the symbols, whatever might be on the packaging, on the labels, on your marketing material, whatever it might be. But then also register it at the Customs Bureau. So you're registering at the CTMO office, and then you're registering at the Customs Bureau. Why? Because the Customs Bureau will then monitor if anybody is exporting your brand, exporting products with your brand assets on them. They will notify you and tell you what action you want to take. Stop them or not. What happened here, again, European company, European brand producing in China. 80, 100 different suppliers, producing different consumer products. Never registered their trademark or their brand assets because their belief was, we're not selling into China, we don't have to. And I honestly want to tell you, this is the assumption people have. If they're in service or if they're in areas of production, they think they don't have to register their brand because there's no branding initiative or marketing initiative. But then a supplier, they cut out the relationship of one of the suppliers. The suppliers was angry. In retaliation, registered the brand assets in China, registered it then in the Customs Bureau. And from the 80 to 100 different suppliers, upon export, if the packaging or the product itself had the brand name, it could not be exported at all. Held at customs. So follow through. Now, I know this has nothing to do with e-commerce, but this is what I'm trying to highlight. Your products from overseas to China have to go through customs. You don't want it to get halted because somebody else has registered your brand. Okay, and this will only happen if the company in China that has registered your brand has followed through with a registration at the CTMO office and then at the Customs Bureau. So please keep this all in mind. So to recap today's presentation, protect your brand so that you use it in the Chinese market. It will help you to clear customs and trade with your trademark on the cartons and labels as long as you are registering it also at the Customs Bureau. It helps you to provide services in China with your brand name on it. Ultimately, it means nobody can take your brand away from you. And it helps to develop repatriation strategies if eventually you want to set up trademark licensing agreements. Now, to finish up here, I'm just going to be a little bit creative with a minor disclaimer. I'm not a branding agent. I'm not a media agency. I'm just thinking logically from an administrative process. If somebody has registered your English brand name in China, you have 3 years from the date of that registration to file an objection. Okay? After 3 years, if that person has rarely or never used it, you can claim, you can register it, basically. You can take it over. All right, so 3 years. Number 2, you can always think about creating a Chinese brand name. If you want to get into China tomorrow and somebody's already taken your English brand name, don't let that halt your experience of the Chinese market. Don't let that halt you to take a bit of the growth opportunity that exists there. You can still say the brand is a Chinese brand name, and you can still say that it's made in Britain or made in the US or made in Australia. It's just that you've changed it to a Chinese name, registered it, and you have the ability to sell it. Now, again, whether that's good or not good, you have to talk to a media agency about that, and they have to create a campaign around it. I'm just telling you that that's an alternative that exists for you to take away with. Whether you want to do that and whether that's strategic for you, you have to decide. But I want to be able to give you your options. All right. So 4 ways you can work with Woodburn to protect your brand is basically brand advisory. Again, I'm not an IP lawyer, but I'm happy to refer you to my network if needed. We do trademark search and registrations. We don't do copyright or patent registrations because there you need to have a certain level of technical knowledge, which IP lawyers would have. And then we also help with setting up repatriation strategies via licensing agreements and whatnot. If you want monitoring services, I can also help to refer you out to that. And you might want to jump on Wednesdays and Thursdays webinars to see what Ryan and Annie offer, because they may be able to guide you on that as well. But these are the types of services that we offer. So these are just my contact details. If you guys have questions, insert them now, or if you want to reach me, I will put these details in the chat box as well a little bit later, and so that you can also contact me directly. But I do want to hop onto the Q&A because I see people writing in the chat box. Okay, so let me go to the top of the questions. 1 second, everybody. So we've got a question. Do you have a recommended website where you can search trademark databases? Yeah, directly on the CTMO website. Type in China Trademark Office and you can do a search there. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. But you can do that search yourself. Now, here's the thing with this, by doing it on your own. By all means, you can try and do this on your own. I just hope you know how to evaluate and analyze it, whatever search results you get back, okay? Because I don't want people to lose hope or get negative about China when they see suddenly through their own search that somebody has taken a name. We can find solutions around this. We can be innovative and create a solution around this. So by all means, do your search by yourself. Go and look at the classes and subclasses you want to register in. But if you want to have an analysis done behind that in terms of your chances or what you can do, what options you have, then go to somebody who has that expertise. Okay. Bettina's question was, if the enemy doesn't use the brand in any of the relevant classes in a given time frame, does it revert back into public domain? So Bettina, if the enemy is using your brand in other classes, you can still register in the classes that you want to register in. Nothing is preventing that. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a brand name and it's registered in classes 3, 4, 5, and actually you want to register in class 35, you can do that. No problem whatsoever. All right, so that's number one. Number two, if the enemy has registered in class 35 and you want to be in class 35, you've got 3 years to file a objection or an appeal, at which point I would also register the mark again, so that once the appeal goes through, you have it and you win, you have a chance to already have filed the registration. Okay, again, if you want more details, but it does not revert back into public domain. It will revert back into public domain after 10 years from the date of registration. Every trademark is valid for a period of 10 years. If you don't do the renewal, it goes back into the public domain. I hope I answered your question on that, Bettina. Dakota was asking, does it mean that we need to register in both English and Chinese, plus as many variants as we can? Do we need? No, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to register in English. I have a Chinese company name, but I don't brand myself with a Chinese name. That's a strategic decision. So I've only registered the English. What is your marketing strategy? Are you going to be marketing in English and Chinese? Are your products going to have a Chinese name on it or an English name? What are you going to be doing? So this is, again, a homework piece that I encourage people to do. Take a piece of paper and say, what activity are you going to be doing? And how is your brand name going to be displayed? Will it be in English or Chinese? And in terms of registering variants, I would only register variants if you're going to actually register and use, if you're actually only going to use those variants. Are you going to use those? I mean, this all comes down to now, and this is why I've got Annie and Ryan coming in as guest speakers, because they are the brand strategists, not me. But this is where we work together, because they will create a strategy and I will tell them if it works from a trademark registration process or not, right? You have to work with the two to be able to develop something concrete. So Dakota, to go back to your question, you don't have to do anything. You just have to create a brand strategy. What do you want to do? What are the activities you're going to be doing? Where is your brand going to be seen? And how are you going to then, is it going to be in English, Chinese or not? Are you going to have a variety of different brand names, etc.? You have to analyze all of that and then register whatever you're planning on using. Kevin, your questions. How long does it take to register a trademark in China? 12 months on average. Can take more, up to 16 months, never less than 12. Usually at the 9th to 10th month, sometimes longer, you will get a notification that it's going to be published in the Trademark Gazette, where it will stay there for 3 months. If there's no objection or appeal, then it will go through, and it usually takes 1 to 2 months thereafter to get your actual certificate. Typical cost, I don't like to reveal costs on webinars. It's made public. If anybody's interested in a cost list from Woodburn, I'll be happy to send that. You can just email me and I can send you our fee quote. What should a brand do if someone has already registered the brand name? So Kevin, I think I answered that already. Can't do anything. You have to rebrand or buy the brand from them. Those are the two solutions. Or do an objection and appeal. But that's where you would probably have to talk to an IP lawyer about what the next steps are. Guys, whoever's asked questions, let me know if I've answered them. And if I haven't, then please expand on it so that I can answer them. You use this time for yourselves. Nicola is asking, is the trademark registration effective on the whole mainland China, or you have to file different times for different zones? Nope, it's effective for all of China. You do one trademark registration for all of China. Jess, yes, Jess, we help brands to register their trademarks. If you're interested in a fee quote, let me know. There are no other questions that have popped in. I'm just going to use this opportunity to provide you with my details. Hold on, I just have to copy and paste them and put them in the chat box. No, that did not work. There we go. So you've got all of my details there that are inside, ways that you can reach out to me. If you guys have any questions, let me know. Just know that tomorrow we're going to be talking about the various e-commerce business models. So everything from cross-border e-commerce to domestic e-commerce to the different strategies companies use in a phased approach to the Chinese market. And I'll be providing case studies as well. Then on Wednesday, we've got Annie from 86 Connects who's coming on to talk about branding is everything, and branding particularly for the marketplaces. And Ryan is popping in on Thursday to talk about how to e-commerce. So, you know, how to evaluate the marketplaces. What is the right marketplace for you? And then physically, how does it work from a supply chain perspective? He is a TP himself, Tmall partner, which means so much more now than it used to. And so he'll give you that guidance. So if you haven't registered for those, please go to woodburnglobal.com/events. I'm going to type that in now as well. And you can register. That's all for today. I'm going to hang out for another 5 minutes. So if you guys do have other questions, please type them in. And otherwise, I wish you a fantastic day. Hope to see you in the rest of the week. Take care and goodbye.